Good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Woohoo!
Welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying.
The only podcast to celebrate the work of actors in understudy roles.
Understudying demands tons of preparation with minimal rehearsal,
Or sometimes none at all.
but it can end in triumphant glory.
In these conversations, we will amplify the diverse voices of actors who have understudied. We want to hear about the actor's technique, experience, and journey.
As well as whatever's on our mind that day. I'm your host, Elana Elise. I'm an actor and director and coach, and you might know me from The Great and Terrible Wizard of Oz at the House Theatre of Chicago.
And I am Scott Sava. I'm an acting coach, actor, teaching artist, and all-around creative dude. You might know me from the commercial that I filmed earlier this year for Tom's Price Furniture, but it only aired for like a week because coronavirus.
Oh, no.
It was a really great commercial.
It's all right. I got paid for it, so I'm okay.
All right. Okay. Someone saw it.
Our guest today is Emjoy Gavino. You might know them from 2 runs of You're on the Moors Now. And I've known Emjoy for coming up on 11 years.
Oh.
We met working on Wilson Wants It All at the House Theatre of Chicago. Welcome, Emjoy.
Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for being here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here.
Yay. So we really just like to start with the most important question given our context, and that is, what was your first understudy gig?
Oh, so my very first understudy gig was pretty high stakes. It was Mirror of the Invisible World at the Goodman Theatre for Mary Zimmerman's Remount production.
Whoa.
And it was scary AF. But yeah, and that was my first time understudying, like just jumping head into deep waters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you like just out of college or?
No, I was just out of Seattle. So I had a pretty good career going. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, Pacific Northwest. Not true. I was born and raised in Renton, Washington. No one knows what that means. But I had a theater career in Seattle, and then my boyfriend at the time got a job at Northlight. And so we moved to Chicago in like 2006, 2007. And 2008, I think, is when I understudied. And yeah, so but up until that point, I'd never had the experience of understudying. And so I kind of didn't know, I knew what understudies were, but I didn't know what the process would be. And I knew that I wanted to work at the Goodman, and this was my way to pay dues and to get to know people in the community. And so there was no question that I was going to say yes. And also it being an equity house, and we can get into the specifics of it, but understudying for Goodman is a very specific job, a really difficult understudy job that requires more than some others might. And so I knew I had to say yes. But my gosh, I bit off a lot for that first time. Yeah.
Did you ever have to go on?
Yes. Yeah. So I was understudying 2 of the leads. There were 6 leads total. 7 leads, actually. And there were 3 female understudies, and we each understudied 2 princesses. And first day that we understudies were allowed to come in, which was probably the last week before they all went into tech, we were watching their Zimmerman run. And like, I don't know if you've seen a Zimmerman show. They're intense. Like, they are scary physical, very circus, very fluid, very much of her language. I had read the script multiple times, but like, I also had never seen a Mary Zimmerman show. So like, coming into the rehearsal room and seeing people do the splits and like wrapping their legs around each other and rolling around the floor. And I was like, do they know who I am and what I can do? Because I don't think they do. I think they saw that I was the same size as these actors and then they just cast me. Terrifying. And then at the end of that first day, where I was just horrified at what I had signed on for, they said, and you're going on the last week, right? And I was like, no, great. Yeah, cool. That's cool. And the other two, and I get this now, but like, because it was my first time, the other three understudies were just like, well, that's so exciting. That's so cool. And like, I wish I could do that too. And I was like, yeah, it's so exciting and so cool. I get to go on. But like, it was just, yeah, it was a really high stakes, and I didn't know what I was doing. And like the prospect of messing up on the Goodman stage in a Mary Zimmerman show was that terrifying. And maybe that was good that was my first time, because it, like, I could not be lazy. I would not be lazy. There was no way that I was going to let people down in that way. And that kind of set my work ethic from that moment on for everything I did since then. But yeah, scary AF.
Yeah. Mary Zimmerman plays, yeah, like you said, are so physical. How did you even, like, go about like memorizing the blocking and all of the physical stuff?
Look, I don't even know how I did it. I was younger then, so that helped. No. So here's the thing about understudying at the Goodman is when you sign on, and I don't know when this became protocol, but when you sign on for understudying at the Goodman, you are there the whole time that the actors you're understudying are there. In terms of the show, you're called a half hour probably before that, and you're there physically, like you're there in the building every single show. Mirror of the Invisible World, by the way, was a 3.5 hour show. Okay, and they did like sometimes more than 8 shows a week. On top of which, you also have 2 or 3 understudy rehearsals a week. So they own you. And because of that, they can pay a really nice wage. Like I was a non-union actor at the time. I was paid more for understudying that show than for most of the shows I did for the first 5 years in Chicago as an actor on stage. That's how much the Goodman paid their understudies. And actually, yeah, they require so much of you, and you can't actually leave the building until your actor goes on for their last scene. That's the deal. And that's not true of every other equity house, or definitely not true of other understudying gigs, but it's also because they pay that much, and they pay that much so that they'll have the security of that. I couldn't not learn the blocking. You're watching one channel the whole time. You're watching their tech, you're watching their rehearsals, you're watching every single show that they do, and you're gonna get quizzed on it the 2 or 3 times you run the show. And we ran the show twice because each of us were understudying 2 roles. And so we would go back and redo those scenes, and our stage manager, Alden Vasquez, who is like one of the best stage managers in Chicago, would not let, and he was harder on me than the other people. I think first of all because I was green, but secondly because he knew for a fact it was going on, and he would not let me fail. And that's the great thing about these stage managers, is they're not gonna let you fail. First of all, because their jobs are on the line, but also because they have to serve the other actors and the audience members who are paying $80 for their seats. And, like, there's no possible way. And so, like, even though it was such hard work, I actually trusted the process because I was in such good hands. The other understudies became like a tiny baby ensemble because we had each other's backs, and we learned in different ways what our actors would do, but like we knew how to do the show with each other so much that when I did the put in with the actual cast, I was like, well, I kind of like the other cast better because I got used to like a month and a half of like doing the show with my understudies. And so, but I was prepared by the time they put me in the costumes and stuff like that. Like, granted, the ASM had to like put me in things and then shove me on stage. But once I got on stage and was rolling around in carpets and silks and on top of people, like, my body knew what to do because it had been so drilled in me in a way that like, which was great because my brain went elsewhere. I was so nervous and so whatever, that first put in that like my body did my work for me. And that's because of Alden and because of the other understudies who were so good to me before that. Yeah, but it took a long time to get there.
That's still awesome. I mean, granted, it was a lot of hard work to have felt so supported and able to execute and to know that far in advance that you would have to go on, right?
It was a blessing.
Yeah, to be sure.
Now I will say.
Please say.
So oh my gosh, because so much happened in that first understudy gig. I understudied 2 actors, and the person I was going on for was a Zimmerman actress like for years, Anjali, and she was, first of all, an awesome, you call them overstudies. She was such an awesome overstudy. She like took care of me. She made sure that I knew what I was doing and how she does things. Now, granted, she has the abs of steel and like, she's like, oh, so you just flip like this and do this. And you know, like all these, I was just like, I can't touch my toes. So are there modifications? And like, she took care of me, but like, she was going to go out for like something cool. Like her friends were getting married. And so like that was planned. They opened the show, and the other person that I was understudying was younger and very talented, but decided to go on a detox that week. And so the show after they opened, a few days after, they were called up places, and then I was told in my understudy dressing room, just so you know, you might have to go on as the other princess. We hadn't really done a run through as understudies yet, because typically you don't start understudy rehearsals until after the show opens because they need to do that first. And I was like, well, that's awful. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yes, I will do it. And so, because she was sick, she was throwing up, and like they weren't sure if she could go on. So at every single scene, at every entrance, they would have me in the next costume in case they'd have to tap out and bring her back. So like technically she was going to go on stage, do a scene, leave, and then the character would come back as a different actor, because she was throwing up into props. And so like, and we did that for the entire show until the final scene, where I would just like run around the theater and then put on the next costume and just be ready to go on for her every single entrance, because that's how sick she felt. Let me tell you, if that doesn't scare you into being ready to go on, nothing will. And again, this didn't happen to anyone else on that show, just me. So it was like that, and then I knew I was going to go on. So by the time I went on for the other actress, I was just like, well, this is easy peasy, because like I knew this was going to happen. But that's why you have an understudy, and that's also why they have the understudies there the whole time, because of moments like this where maybe this princess is going to come on as an entirely different being, and you just have to yes and it because it's theater.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, whoops, scary. Don't do a detox. Just that's the lesson.
That was like, you basically went through an understudy boot camp on your first time out.
Really?
I sure did.
Everything that could possibly have happened.
It was not my favorite thing.
Including going on though too. Like that's such like, I mean, surely at this point and you're like looking back on that, you're like, yeah, like that was great, you know, like it prepared you for so many different kinds of things. Yeah.
It did. And like, you know, the thing, and you both know, like, you have to give yourself a process. And what it taught me was the blessing of the process that you get when you do actually get to be in a show. Because they don't hand it to you when you're an understudy. And like, I was lucky because, you know, when you understudy for places like Goodman or Steppenwolf, you still get more of a process than you do when you only have like one understudy rehearsal and that's it. And sometimes that's all theaters can afford. And that's just like logistics. And so because of that, you have to do so much what people call outside in work, where, you know, like technically, you have to hit this emotional beat and you have to hit this place on the stage, not because it's organic to you, but because it was organic to the actor who originated that role. And so like for somebody who's not used to that, it can feel stifling. But if you open yourself up to it, it can be artistic. You just have to play within the confines of that, and that can be frustrating. Mm. The Mirror of the Invisible World was my first understudy gig, but because I was new to town, all I did for a year and a half, with the exception of Barrel of Monkeys, which is now Playmakers Lab, the only performing I did was as an understudy for a year and a half. That's all I did. And so I definitely honed those skills, but like after a year and a half, I really didn't want to do it anymore because it does get tiring not being given that process and having to give it to yourself. And I think it's worth it to do at least once in your life or a few times in your life, but to only do that it's just really, it's a hard thing that deserves all the pay in the world, really, you know.
Before you got to Chicago, what was like your training or your theater experience in Seattle?
I went to a small Christian college called Seattle Pacific University that I originally went to because I wanted to be a psychologist, and they have a really excellent psychology program. They happen to have a theater program, and I was like, cool, their stages are really pretty, and like, you know, I can do that on the side while pursuing psychology. And so I didn't go there for the theater because I didn't think I was going to pursue theater. I thought it was going to be something I did for funsies. When I got there in Acting 101 and Production Practicum, I was definitely the only minority in that entire department for like top to bottom, all the classes, no other minorities. And so like even the plays and the things that I did for fun there, they didn't know how to use me. They didn't know. I played a monkey. I played a circus freak. I played a maid. I was always up for leads and I never got them. And so I just started to audition around town for specifically Asian roles, but there were plenty of them because it was the Pacific Northwest. And so I started to build a resume just on my own outside of college because I missed the performing so much, still thinking that I was going to pursue psychology. And my second quarter of college, I was taking psychology and I was taking an acting class taught by an adjunct professor who was also an artistic director in Seattle. And my psychology class was so boring and my acting class was so fun. And the acting teacher was just like, why aren't you majoring in theater? You should. And I was like, oh, okay. So I switched majors. I was no longer a psychology major and I started to pursue theater for real. But like, I recognized that I couldn't do it at school because of the restrictions and because I hate to say it, lack of imagination at that time. And so I just went out and basically had I almost turned equity in Seattle before we left. And I built up a pretty healthy resume by the time I graduated college, and was mainly I learned how to sing so that I could do theater because I thought that's the way Asian people could be on stage. And I did some musical theater and a lot of Asian roles. And that's kind of the trajectory that I thought I would take with me to Chicago. And, you know, then I got here and I was like, oh, so Silk Road? And who has Asians on their brochures? Oh, there's one on the Goodman website for this upcoming show called Mirror of the Invisible World. Let's email Adam Belcour, the casting director, and tell him I'm in town. And also I can do Christmas Carol because I know you need minorities for a Christmas Carol. So like, I think I tried to replicate the things that I was doing in Seattle to do in Chicago, and then stuff happened. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's interesting that because Elana, you also were a psychology major. I started with a psychology minor,
No
and an
way.
acting major.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, with psychology, I got to a point, I don't know if it was the labs or the statistics,
Ugh, it
that
was the
I just
statistics
was
for
like,
me.
done.
Yeah.
I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Oh,
statistics. Now, I'm not a big fan of numbers, and that was a class many had to take twice, and I was like, watch me not have to take statistics twice, and I didn't.
Of course you didn't.
It was like such a major accomplishment, though. I mean, obviously, y'all hear yourselves. I was like, let's go stats, right? And like, I mean, I got a C. I didn't like crush it, but I'm
it's
like,
hard.
I ain't taking it twice.
No, and it wasn't fun.
Well,
time.
and it's interesting because, you know, we all ended up being actors, that, you know, that psychology, that what we get out of psychology is very related to what we get out of acting, it seems.
Absolutely. I think the things that make a good therapist, and, you know, everybody has different things that make a good therapist, but like, you have to be a good listener. I think it helps to have compassion. I think it, like, all of the things that I think I think it completely makes sense for actors to also be interested in psychology. In fact, I think the most in-depth performances come from people who are interested in psychology, you know? So I think that all tracks for me. But statistics, blah.
Oof. And you mentioned earlier about the outside in that you learned that over understudying. Are you usually more of an inside out actor?
Fully. And I mean, that comes from the psychology major, right? It's just kind of like, I want to, you know, and when I do text analysis, which is not what I call it, but I guess is what it is. It's, you know, when I read a script, like, the first thing I examine is like, why are they doing the things that they're doing and who are they doing it for? And that is very internal. But, you know, with an understudy, it's just kind of like, well, okay, but how do I get to that performance or that heatedness in that moment? You can't necessarily start inside out, because the way I will get to point C is not the way that actor got to point C. So I have to start at point C and then work backwards in order to make it organic to me, which is so hard.
It is hard. And Emjoy, on this particular topic, what has been your understanding of the expectation? So like what I'm hearing now is about like your own perception of how you need to, you know, how you need to duplicate this character that you're understudying. Do you have any idea what directors or stage managers actually have expected of you artistically? Has it been a sense of like, you need to do it exactly as she did it? Or have you ever been clearly given any direction in that regard? Whether, you know, create your own and hit all the physical points, or tell the story exactly as your overstudy?
It depends entirely on the project and on the stage manager. You know, for something like a Mary Zimmerman play, or the last thing I understudied was in 2011, where I was an internal understudy for Christmas Carol. Those are very physical, precise, technical things where, yes, eventually you can there's some wiggle room, but you really have to hit certain marks in certain ways. There's a musicality to it. It's like understudying a musical, even though neither of those were musicals. Christmas Carol a little bit, but not really, you know, but you know what I mean in terms of the precision. And so, but those stage managers are also going to be really great at being able to tell you, you need to get here and here and here. There's not a lot of time in those understudy rehearsals to explore. But that said, you know, if you're going off the rails, those stage managers, or if you're lucky, assistant directors are going to like reel you back in and say like, you actually just need to do the line this way because the text needs it, or the somebody needs to hear it this way to make their entrance, or, you know, whatever. So expectations are going to be a wide range. And the hope is that you have an artistic team that is on the same page as the stage management team, who then relays it clearly to the actors. And like when I'm a casting director too, and when I make those understudy offers, I make it clear what their expectations are for for the gift, or for when I was working for ATC, which is we want you to be prepared, but we also want you to feel like you're using your voice, but also know the blocking. And so like it really will depend on the theater and the project itself a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, so we, that first one was really incredible. I had two follow-ups to it. One, some of the other experiences and how they differed from Goodman. And like, how many roles have you understudied at once in your career?
Actually, I think the most I did was for Christmas Carol. And that was Ghost of Christmas Past, Fan, Belle. But I think I did 4.
And those are all different tracks?
Yes, different actors. And because within that, because Belle was also like I think the beggar woman, and Fan was also the little girl in the Fezziwig party, and like, so like, yeah. So I had to understudy 4 people with separate tracks. And then before that, I understudied Kafka on the shore at Steppenwolf, and I think I want to say 2 or 3 different actors, but I want to say Christmas Carol was the most. And that was a lot. That
is a lot, especially with each of those tracks also having multiple characters. Like, what? That's insane. And I'm going to pretend I never heard of it. Because it's nightmarish.
It is a nightmare. Yeah.
So how have some of the other experiences, how did they differ from Goodman? And did you find other pieces of value in some of the other experiences?
I was really lucky because all of the understudy experiences that I've had were in equity houses where we'd at least get at least one understudy rehearsal a week, usually more, plus an understudy run. And also equity stage managers who would have like a required amount of time designated to taking care of us. And so because of that, like, I think I was always taken care of in a way that understudies are not always taken care of. The Goodman ran me through the ringer the most because of how much it required of me, and also because I didn't know what I was doing. So I think everything after that was easy. Because, like for Mirror Invisible World, like I had scenes with myself. And so like, and actually almost all of the plays that I've done, because I've at least understudied 2 roles at the same time for all of the things that I've understudied, I've had scenes with myself. And like, that's just a bit of a mind fuck. But I'm trying to think of the things that made it different. I mean, I was lucky. Every single thing that I've understudied, I became really close with the people that understudied with me. And so it was like building an ensemble. I felt like at one point, I wrote my goodbye letters to people on closing, and usually it's a mixtape. Elana knows. And I told another understudy, like, I feel like we went through a war together, which sounds so melodramatic, but it actually did feel like that, because we come in, this is so dramatic. We come in and it's a tiny bit of a trauma. We come in and we might go on or we might not. And so it is a weird sort of stress that like people kind of don't think about because they don't have to. But just like I go to sleep and I wonder if I have to go on for whatever reason, and maybe you kind of want to, or maybe you don't, but the not knowing it's a little scary. And to have to do that on multiple days for a few months is also, I guess trauma isn't a good word, but it kind of is.
Well, stressful at the very least.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and
it's not a normal job.
Right. It's not normal. And what we are so easily able to ignore is what stress does to our bodies and our state of being. Like we're so and whether we're in the arts or not, like we're very programmed to not care about that, not deal with that. Like, we're doing this job. This is what it is.
Yes.
Da, da, da. So the stress of that is still very real, whether we're acknowledging it in real time or not. And to be going through that on a daily basis for multiple characters, like, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
And, you know, it can ultimately result in something we can call trauma, you know, but if we want to lessen the impact of our verbiage,
it's a tiny daily stress. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, and, you know, there's not necessarily a catharsis. You know, like, you do all this prep, and usually as an actor, you do all this prep, and there is at least, you know, if you're in a high school production, at least the 2 nights that you do it in front of your friends and family, right? And you don't always get that as an understudy. And even, you know, I've heard people talk about this on your podcast before. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get a designer run or an understudy run where people can come and watch. But if you're doing a show where you're playing multiple characters, it's not a full production. You're not getting a real play experience. You're getting to, like, show a little bit of what you've prepped, but it's not the same as showing off, like, look, this is the best that I can do. I am free falling, just, like, heart in it. Like, I hope people get to do that during understudy runs, but, like, the fact is, it's the first time you're on that set. Maybe you're in costume, and it feels a little weird because you've never done it in front of anybody other than the stage manager before, and you're talking to yourself, and it's weird. And it's not normal. And so, like, God bless you if you're able to get something beautiful and are cathartic out of it. But, like, the truth is, you're probably not. And that's hard on actors, I think.
It is.
You know, not to say, I feel like it traumatized me. It didn't, but it is actually, like, it's a harder job than what I think people know it is.
Yeah. And that's why Scott wanted to do this podcast,
it's
to tell people about it.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's kind of true about acting in general. It looks like a lot of fun, and it looks really easy, but there's a lot of work. But
you don't know. You don't. You don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is, like, there is an artistry within it, and it can be beautiful. It just isn't the same thing as the thing that the overactor gets to do.
You have to prepare yourself for that you aren't going to get that catharsis, that you're not going to get that performance.
Yeah, the release. Yeah.
But you know, like, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, well, am I doing this so that I can be big and famous, or am I doing this because I'm an artist and I want to work on that? Right. And that's a very good thing that can come out of understudying.
Absolutely. Yeah. It
is time for one of our segments. It is newly called The Hustle.
That's that L Mac.
Oh, yes. Come on, Mackenzie.
Oh, do you know Laura?
Oh, I love Laura. She's the best.
Yes,
Have you watched her music video?
God, Laura
Emjoy's
Mackenzie.
in it.
What? Wait, what?
The video.
I
gotta watch it again. I didn't know you then.
You didn't recognize me because I'm not in a velour pantsuit, but like, Laura wrote all that music, and she's so sexy in that video, and she's so good. This isn't the shout out part of your podcast, but, like, oh my God, yes, of course, that's Laura's music. Everything she does is sexy, just ridiculous.
There's always time for a shout out for Laura.
Every day, every damn day.
Yes, one of our objectives with this podcast, objectives. Oh, what an actor word.
I'm working on it.
Is to kind of demystify the financial living of actors, especially in Chicago. My question for you is, how do you make a living? Do you have a day job situation or a side hustle?
Do you mean before times? Do you mean not 2020?
Yeah. So that's the caveat. Definitely before times is appropriate to talk about.
Yeah. Before times, I've been pretty lucky. I mainly, my main income was from acting. For at least the past 5 or 6 years. And then on the side, I would make money as a casting director. And then sometimes as a teaching artist.
but it's all kind of related to theater. I've been really lucky. Before that, when I was going through like long bouts of unemployment, which I would still every year go through some bouts, but like for longer spells, I worked in retail. I was actually a really good shoe salesperson in Evanston for Williams Shoes on Church Street. And I was there for a really long time. Met Estelle Parsons. She has tiny feet.
Scoop. But like
You heard it here first.
Right.
Estelle Parsons has tiny feet. And yeah, so I would work retail.
For my side hustle, and then just try to I would volunteer to do anything related to theater that I could.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you kind of made the jump into acting full time, what prompted that decision, and how did it play out for you?
I think I had to quit my retail gig because of I turned equity on a show called Working at the Broadway Playhouse. Because even Mirror Invisible World was a full-time job, but it was just for the summer. So I just took that summer off and then went back to my retail job. But Working, not only did they force me to turn equity, which I was very mad about, but it was going to be an open-ended commercial run. And so I couldn't guarantee that I was going to come back, which wasn't really fair to the shoe store. And also, I was kind of over retail by that point, and it was just kind of, my agent was just like, it's time to just let go and just commit to seeing where this goes. And so it really was getting a job that would not allow me to do my other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
And then I booked it and then turned equity and then proceeded to not work for a while and then but it all works out. It's fine.
Is there a show you can think of that you would never understudy?
Cats.
No matter what. Okay.
It's my
Okay.
nightmare.
Would you do Cats as a principal?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So you just would not touch
No.
it at all.
No,
I love
Cats
that
is
you
my
have
nightmare. Just in every single sense of the word. Cats is my nightmare. But I did have a nightmare about I had to go on as an understudy in Cats and I woke up screaming. That would be awful for so many reasons.
Oh,
but
God.
maybe I would do, is it Grisabella? Who's the one who doesn't dance?
Yep.
And
Grisabella.
sings Memory. Is that
Yeah.
Chris? She doesn't dance though, right? I would maybe do that, but probably not. Because I'd still have to listen to Cats
would for a while.
if I were in the show.
Angelical cats, angelical cats.
Nope.
Angelical.
I have not seen
No.
the film. I don't know if I will, but I like Cats. I've seen it on stage. I've listened to the soundtrack my whole life, and I know I'm in the minority on that. But I do.
You're not, because it's the longest running show
I'm
on
in
Broadway.
the minority
So
among
you're
the people
clearly
that I know in real life. No one I know likes Cats.
Yeah, no offense.
I only saw the movie and I liked it. I had a fun
Did
time.
you like it?
I mean, I know it was bad.
Right, but
and
you enjoyed it.
I understand
I had a
people
good
get
time.
high and enjoy it. I've heard that about people.
That sounds scary. That sounds like maybe not the right way to go.
that might be you might find yourself in a bad way.
You could.
But I don't know. But I also just don't like cats.
Right.
Yeah, Emjoy, do you not like Cats the animal as well?
They're not my favorite. I don't dislike them, but I'm more of a dog person. But yeah, no, I saw it live and I tried to like it, and then I was so relieved when Act 1 happened and they're intermission. I was like, it's not done yet. Oh God.
and then I stayed for Act 2, but I got very wasted doing it.
Oh, man, that's incredible. But I'm
But
still
no.
just glad you had an answer for that question. I love
Oh, just
we've had people try to be I don't know, all philosophical about it, and I'm like, there's gotta
Nope.
be
Nope.
So yes,
Just because here's the thing, what we know about understudying is that you have to study that play and you have to be there and live it and breathe it even more than the people who are in it. I would not want to do that for cats. Thank you very much. Also, can't touch my toes. So all of those things combined. Just no cats for me.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh.
Have you ever had to and you don't have to name names here, but have you ever had to understudy a show that, like a play that you did not like?
Oh. Actually no, but by the end of most of them, I got tired of it, if that makes sense. So like I actually did, here's the thing. You always have a choice, right? And so like I wouldn't, even when I was starting out and wanted to please people and pay my dues, I never signed on for anything where I didn't really want to do the play. And so for all of my understudy things, I at least started out liking the play. But after watching it multiple times with, the same people and like not being able to perform, I begin to resent the play no matter how good it is. And so like for most of them, I eventually end up not loving it and not needing to watch that final performance really hard. But I usually like the show going into it. For all of them. Yeah.
That's good stuff. So you were going to go into psychology, right? So that's what it is. Today, it could be that or something else. If you weren't an artist, what do you think you'd be doing?
I mean, I do go back and forth about becoming a therapist just because I am still interested in that. But would I still have to take statistics? I probably would. So like, ugh.
I don't know. It could be different because you do have an undergraduate degree. So that means that sometimes, even though if it may not be in the same field, right? So sometimes when you go to that next level for a master's or whatever, everything already mattered. And you don't have to do some of that same stuff. So
that's true. So I mean, like realistically, logistically, like I think that's the only other thing that I would think about doing. Dream of all dreams. Like I still dream about this sometimes. Like I've always wanted to have my own bookstore/bar. Like the bar thing came later, but like even when I was in grade school, I've always wanted to have my own bookstore and work and just like be in that bookstore. And so like every now and then I was just like, that would be so nice. And then, I can have readings and I could just be surrounded by books like Belle and Beauty and the Beast and like,
that would be so cute.
Not practical, but it's a dreamy dream that
Anything is possible.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I daydream about having like a coffee shop or something with a little stage and, putting up little plays.
Yeah. You could have like a cabaret or something. Yeah. It'd be so cute.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Spoken word.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's so cute.
Why don't we take a break and we'll have more with Emjoy Gavino. And we're back with Emjoy Gavino. Emjoy, we want to talk a little bit about being a casting director. How do you go about choosing understudies and what kind of policies do you have at the theaters you work at?
Yeah, I mean it's a complicated thing, right? I've worked for great companies, some of which have equity contracts, usually not reserved for the understudies. And so typically I pull the actors from I make understudy offers from the people who have auditioned for those roles. But some of the times, because I work for an ensemble theater, I won't be able to do that because there were no auditions for those roles. They were just direct offers to ensemble members. And that's when it gets a little bit like tricky, partially because people would have wanted the opportunity to try for it.
Absolutely.
And so then, at least the way I do it is I rely on my experiences with these actors where I know I can trust them in the room to do the work, that I know that I've seen them in shows where they displayed the things that I need them to do. And then I pray that they like me enough to want to do this really hard, important work. For a theater that can't pay them to be there every day and give them the process that I know would be so helpful. And so in those situations, Like I reach out personally and I say, I know this is asking a lot, but actually, like, we're going to try to fold you into this process as much as you want, and have access to the director and have access to the dramaturg and talk to me. And like, we won't be able to give you like a weekly understudy rehearsal, but like, talk to us and let us know how we can make this experience good for you, but we want you on our team. And that's not bullshit. Like, it's all true. I stress the importance of a good understudy, and sometimes because of the low amount that we have to pay because of the theater company's budget, you can't always get the people that will have the work ethic that is immediately necessary, right? And sometimes you'll get like what I was for Mirror Invisible World, complete newbies to the experience. And then it's up to the stage manager, where you pray that they get them ready so that if, God forbid, anything happens to those overstudies, or if, you know, more likely they book something on Chicago Med, which happens way more, especially in the last 5 years, then you have to get understudies who know exactly what to do and that you could believe in those roles. And so when I make those offers, I hope I make people understand that, like, we really want them in the room because of how good they are, because we know that they could take on something so difficult and that we trust them with it. And that we wish that we could pay them more. And what else can we give you that we can't give in money, you know? So I know there are some theater companies, among them being Goodman and Steppenwolf, that have understudy auditions. But those are the people that can pay, you know, a weekly salary. And so, you know, for us smaller storefronts or smaller houses, you sometimes just have to go off of reputation and artistic relationships and prayers, you know. But it is a really, it's something to consider. And, you know, my job as a casting director, and everybody does it a different way, I have a responsibility to the storytelling and a responsibility that I take very seriously to the rest of the ensemble, where we also want to hire people who aren't jerks, who you can trust and feel safe within the room, on top of which they have to be able to tell the same kind of story that the director set off to tell with the original cast, right? And so, like, Elana and I were talking about this. I was the casting director for a show we did at Remy Bumpo, and Elana had to understudy Penelope Walker and Mary Poole, two very different human bodies. One was a Black woman, but one was not a Black woman, and a very different age. It was a Carol Churchill play called Love and Information. What was great about that script, and also the way we cast it, and also the way I like to cast a lot of the things that I work on, is it was open casting, where, yeah, we have a point of view, and this person and their body gives a certain access to that character, but it could also be this person and their body and their voice, and it changes the story, but not so much that it doesn't still tell the story. And so, you know, depending on the project, we still like to use our imagination, as long as it doesn't change the original direction that everybody was going for. And so I think, again, celebrating the artistry of what could be in Understudying, it goes with the casting too, of you have to honor it. And like, sometimes it's like a logistical thing of like, they should also be able to fit their costumes. But really what it comes down to is, can this person, if they needed to go on tomorrow, believably do these roles and serve the story in a similar way that still gives the audience members and the ensemble what they signed up for? And, you know, when you have somebody like Elana Elise who could do anything, like, you can give them the big range. Now, what I didn't mention about my first experience understudying is I understudied the Indian princess and the Greek princess. And we can have a different podcast about the way in which things were handled 5-10 years ago. But I remember even as a newbie to Chicago and like wanting to impress everybody, like I remember speaking the words out loud with her accent, because Anjali was using an accent for the Indian princess, starting to and being like, no, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't come inherently from me. You knew what you cast when you cast me, and I'm sorry, I can't. And to his credit, Alden was like, great. And it doesn't change the story. And he was respectful of that. And like, but I do think that there are other actors who would just try to do like word for word and gesture for gesture exactly what that actress did. And that's within their right. But personally, like, I got stress hives by trying to do that. And so like, there are some things in Love and Information where it can run the gamut, and you can be a different ethnicity, and you can be a different body type, and you can be a different age or gender, and it'll still tell the story. But like, then there's a responsibility in terms of like, okay, I will wear the Indian princess costume, but like, that's already pushing it for me.
Yeah.
And the fact that like the Greek princess didn't have an accent, and I was just like, this is just happening because Anjali happens to be Indian, so she's choosing this thing that is authentic to her. I'm not going to put that on, and I can still be this woman, this character, and the character she plays, and it's not going to ruin anything, so I'm just going to not do it because it feels icky to me. And like, that is something that like I never got from the casting director, you must use this accent, because I didn't have that reference until I started watching them do it the week before Tech. So like, I felt the freedom to say no, or to just not choose that. Yeah.
That's really great. I'm glad that you did that, and that he was like, oh, cool. Like, that's like,
Me too. Good
that's
Lord.
really significant. I mean, even as time has gone on since then, like, that's still a thing that could be problematic for someone today.
Yeah. And it's something that like, because casting directors, I'll often work for stipends and freelance artists, or freelance artists too, like, and the amount of money you can offer other actors, you sometimes get in a situation where you're just grappling for an actor who could kind of do roles. And sometimes you end up with people who shouldn't be understudying certain ethnicities or role or identities, in the same way that you should just look at them for the over studies roles, right? And it's something that you, even though it's inconvenient to consider, you have to consider the whole picture, because they might have to go on, and then what are you going to look like? What is your responsibility as a theater company? And it's something that now is being considered, but I think even 5 years ago definitely was not.
Well, you guys are, you're not only just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. People say that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. With the Chicago Inclusion Project. And so like, not only just in your casting director duties, and Elana in your producer duties, but can you tell me about the Chicago Inclusion Project and the genesis and kind of what you guys have done with it? Either of you, I guess.
Okay, no. Okay. So here's how it really began. Like, one day, Emjoy sent like just a bunch of people like, hey, what if I wanted to put some readings together with people who, you don't normally see in the roles of those plays? Like, are there some plays that you want to do? And she made this Google Doc, and most of us were like, yeah, here's a play. I put one play on that list, and like some other people did too. And then, some time passed, and it's like, hey, are we doing this thing? And she was like, yeah, we're totally doing it. And then we did a thing. That wasn't that exactly. It was a different thing, and it was a bigger thing, and it was an amazing thing. Talk about that first thing, Emjoy. The first
I'm
reading.
so glad I forgot about the Google Doc, because it was a long time coming. Because like, oh my God, I love the way you tell that story so much. I hope you always tell it that way. Because Elana and we have a circle of friends, and I have outside circles of friends where we just kind of were looking at the landscape of Chicago theater, and we're like, I can only speak for myself. I felt powerless. Like, I didn't want to start a theater company, but I also at that time was not a casting director. And so like, but we also knew what we could do. Like, we individually knew what we were capable of, and were angry, first of all, that we weren't being allowed to do things outside of our boxes for the most part. We weren't being let into rooms. And also, one of the biggest things that our tagline for Chicago Inclusion Project is, one of them, because I think we have like 5, is just get everyone in the same room. And what that means is, with the exception of A Christmas Carol, when are you going to see artists who look like me, and who look like Elana, and who are trans, and who are disabled, and, you know, like, how are you going to get all those people in the room? On top of which, because theater is an increasingly expensive luxury to some people, how are you going to get the audience to reflect that diversity? And so, like, literally getting everyone in the same room and removing the boundaries that separate us in general, that like don't need to be there. And so what started off as a reading at Victory Gardens, which was an accessible space full of, you know, some equity and non-equity bodies doing roles that people wouldn't necessarily have seen those actors do, putting them all in the same space together was just an experiment. It was an experiment and an offering, because we were tired of talking about it. We were tired of feeling powerless, and we kind of just wanted to like show directors and artistic directors and casting people and audience members and subscribers, it's not that hard. Like, just put them in the roles. And so we started intentionally with something that was like old-timey. We did a classic contemporary piece called Time of Your Life by William Soroyan. And when you read, like we talk about text analysis, when you read the script, it doesn't say Joe, a white man who is 165 pounds and this tall. Like, it doesn't say that. It just says Joe is a dreamer and he's unhappy. And it says this person is, you know, like, the confines of what the author provides is not necessarily what people project onto them. And so we were trying to bust out of those assumptions. And so we started with that one reading, and then recognized that, oh, we can't just show them. We actually have to collaborate and work with theater companies so that it's a demonstration. It's not just a thing that we put on for them. We have to do it with them so that they do it without us. So we don't have to hold their hands. And so like it evolved from one thing to the next thing. And like it is exhausting, but we keep having to shift, because now it's not, oh, how do we make the stage pictures different? Because now they're pretty different now,
and we had
right?
we did several like on that scale, including In the Next Room, or the Vibrator play with Timeline, who then did produce a version with an inclusive cast.
Nice.
So we had one of the readings in the same way we did Time of Your Life, and we had done one at Writers as well. But like, this was the one that it was like, oh,
that was our success.
You know, right. And so, and what that did for us, which I also have never spoken about it in this way, and it's given me goosebumps, is that, so when we started to shift, it was also coming off of that particular success. Like, this is what we've been trying to tell you is possible.
Yes.
And here's a respected and reputable company doing it. And now we're shifting, but we shift with the artistic community, right? Like, what's needed. And I often say that shift is off sometimes out of our control. Like, we don't always, like, we're usually like, oh, there's this need. Oh, they need us here. Okay, here we are. Right. Versus knowing that ahead of time and shifting ahead of the shift, you know, being prepared for that. So we have kind of had this fluidity in what the needs of the community have been, which, you know, is twofold. Like, so there's a bonus to that in terms of people know that there's this organization out here that could maybe help us, and then us inside the organization trying to figure out, okay, like, what is it that we're doing, you know? And so we stay in conversation, and so it's like twofold. So we can be, what people need us to be, but also what we're trying to be and accomplish, which is really still all wrapped up in wanting arts organizations, theater companies to be equitable, inclusive and equitable, top to bottom across the board, right? So that's on stage, that's production team, that's decision makers, that's board, and so and audience members, accessibility, physically and financially. So like where those holes open up, like and it's clear that those gaps are, we're just like, hey, this is a way that that you can get to what you think you want to be. And every now and then we have to be like, excuse me, I'm sorry, you want to be somewhere else. we're here to tell you that this, what you're doing right here, this is not where you want to be. Right. So it's this constant kind of flux, which keeps things interesting, but also, it keeps us on our toes, because we're like, what is it? But all of it is the same goal. Like we still like, basically we want the arts accessible and equitable, inclusive.
Right. And if anything, we've just refined ourselves over the years of like, because I think, when we first started, it's just kind of like, let's get some inclusive experiences on stage. Like, let's look. I think we were mainly looking at casting, and then also thinking about pay what you can, and, eventually, like after that first reading, captioning and like all that stuff. But like, it was focused on the casting process, right? And then it really was in the last couple of years, we're just like, but also let's start actually having those conversations about hiring practices. Not that we know how to do it, but like, let's talk about those designers. Let's talk about the leaders. And like, it's still hard to do. And I think, that's what we're looking at in this moment in 2020 is like, people are still figuring out how to do that while also holding on to their power. But like, it's not just casting anymore. And I feel like when we started, because I wasn't a producer yet, and because I was a new casting director, I was mainly an actor, I was only thinking about the bodies on stage. And then like after a year of conversations and developing our language as an organization, we're like, oh no, it has to be everybody. And like that's just gotten stronger and clearer in the last 5 years.
Yeah. And that the up to, because like they were all steps. It was like, oh, not just the people on stage, the crew too. And then it was like, oh, well, not just the crew too. Like then like what about who's making the decisions about the season? Like they should, like you can
and how they make those decisions.
Right. Like who's involved? Right. What's that process? All of that, and so like it was still like the realizations were still like steps, which was really great, because then we could reckon with each of those ideas. Like if we had began with this great big idea, my goodness, we'd still be trying to figure out how to start. So it was great that it was like bodies on stage. This is the thing we want to show you. Oh, good.
And we learned right alongside them too, which I think was, humbling and helpful to all involved, because like we were with our collaborators and it would maybe occur to us first, but we hadn't tried it out. So then we'd be like, well, what about this thing? Let's figure out how to do that together. And it was new to us. We weren't like these authority figures. We're just like, this is how you do all the inclusive, accessible things. It was, oh, you know what? Actually, we should try this. And, you have the resources to do it. So like, let's try it. And if you fail, then we tried, but like it was out of, and I think this is a good thing just for every artistic endeavor, is like out of curiosity and out of an embrace of the unknown and without fear. And like what was great about all those readings that we did and the later ones where we went into the neighborhoods is like, what's the worst that can happen to you if it doesn't go well? It's a play. So, try it. See what happens. Usually it's better. And like, because we always approach it from curiosity and like not necessarily knowing it's gonna succeed, typically it's more fun that way and much more rewarding. And I think we learn as much as our collaborators, which has been great.
That's amazing. I love it. What's kind of the next frontier for you guys? Like, what are you, what's next to kind of fix the, I mean, we're not going to fix the problem, but you know.
How do we end racism? Is
yes,
that what you're
exactly,
asking?
exactly.
All right, no, we got you.
Cool,
We're totally
cool.
ready. We
So
knew
it's
you were going to ask
yeah.
us this.
So there's a Zoom next week, and we're gonna end racism, and it's gonna be great.
Awesome.
Bring
Show
your
up.
own cocktails.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's the end game
my
here.
gosh.
Okay. Good.
Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
we will have in 2021. We'll be talking about some pathways that organizations will have, and we'll have some workshops available for organizations to participate in. You know, we really enjoy our training series, and we're glad to have been able to do it for 2020 in the midst of all the crap.
Yeah.
And we're looking to perfect that and its availability to people.
Yeah. I mean, just like every other, not just theater company, every other company, we've had to pivot, right, in the ways in which we do. Because like I said, our tagline was, let's get everyone in the same room. Not right now. Don't do it. That's not safe. And so like get everyone in the same Zoom doesn't exactly have the quality that like we all want. And so, you know, it's what Elana was saying earlier about tending to the needs of our community, and specifically like what we as an organization have gotten to reckon with is, who are we serving right now? Who is the most important person to protect and to uphold, uplift, and embrace and nurture. And you know, if we have to focus on one thing, it's the marginalized communities. And so we're trying to figure out how to best
I was going to
serve
say
them.
it's who exactly, because we are also needing to learn what they need from us.
Exactly.
You know, so how we can serve them what they need.
That's been a learning curve that like we have not quite figured out, but like no one has, and that's also just kind of the journey. And I'm excited to do the work, and we have to figure out how to best do that work.
That's awesome. I mean, so often as actors, we feel so out of control of everything. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, how do you take control of your career as an actor? And I think the work you guys are doing is just really moving towards that and embracing taking on those problems and those issues. And I love it.
Thanks for getting us to talk about it at the same time, because
that was
really
nice.
Realized that we hadn't done that.
You really haven't. Thanks, Scott.
We
No
did
problem.
a good job.
Yay! You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
Whoa. Okay, so now it's time to check your props, and what we do is lift up the last great understudy performance that you saw, or anybody that you want to give a shout out for their excellence. That's what these props are about.
Yeah. It wasn't the last understudy performance that I witnessed, although I have witnessed some. Can I talk about one of my most favorite understudies that I've worked with?
Yes, indeed.
Is that a thing that I can do?
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so I was doing a show called Fallen Angels, which is a Noel Coward at Remy Bumpo. And the actor who played, I guess you can call it the romantic lead, was the only smart person in the cast to negotiate to not be doing shows during Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. None of us even looked at the calendar to realize we would be doing these shows. Josh did, and he's like, peace out, I'm not doing these shows, good luck everyone. And so his understudy was always going to go on, and his understudy, and I was the casting director for that show too, was a nice man named Martell Manning. And I met him during generals for Remy Bumpo, and like we were all astounded by his technique and like just really wonderful personality, and like his resume was just like so much classical theater, and we're like, oh my gosh, how are you not working all the time? So he went on for Josh in the romantic lead, and was not only always prepared, like he was so prepared in the put-in, but like he literally, because Fallen Angels was a really physical show, and like there were a lot of pratfalls, there were a lot of things. He literally had my back, like in a way that like I knew he wasn't ever going to let me fall. And that is like literally, physically, and emotionally. Like he was such a good support as an understudy. And to this day, I was like, there are some ensemble members where like I've done shows and they've not made me feel that taken care of. And I remembered that. And so much that like when we needed somebody to understudy Namir in Grapes of Wrath at The Gift, the first person we thought of was Martell Manning, who would have to go on for a week. And because of that experience, because then all these ensemble members at The Gift got to work with him, he was then cast in another Gift show. He's now an ensemble member. He was the lead in Pillowman. And but what I took with me, and then what everyone who has worked with him since has taken with them, is that he will always have your back. And like, I recently did Kentucky with him last year, and, he was my scene partner, and he took care of every single person on that stage. And like, that is just what you want in an ensemble actor, in an understudy, is like, I have your back, I got you. And that comes from prep, but that also just comes from being a wonderful human being. And so, yeah, he's my shout out.
Nice. Hey, Martell. You the man.
You the man.
Emjoy, we know it's, we're in Corona times, so there might not be anything, booked in the future. But are you working on anything right now? Do you have anything booked that you want to talk about?
Who knows what 2021 will be?
Right.
Inclusion project stuff. We'll probably have more to talk about, but Elana will tell you about it later.
You did an Animal Farm video or audio thing? What is that about?
We did a radio
I'm so
play.
In that.
We did a radio play for the Steppenwolf for Young Adults program. They took the script that they actually had on stage like 4 or 5 years ago that I auditioned for, actually. And they just tweaked the script a little and then turned it into a radio play. And so we recorded that, and like they showed me the map of all the places that they're playing it. Like, it's in Iran, it's in the Philippines. Like, in terms of accessibility, like, weird gift of pandemic, like this is a production that will reach like all ends of the earth. It's pretty awesome to know that that's being listened to. So yeah, really great. I played a goat and a hen, obviously.
What was kind of your like process for that? Like, I mean, because Elana and I worked on The Spin with Interrobang recently, and so we were performing together. But we still weren't, in the same room. It was all over Zoom. So like that kind of created, there was a wistfulness about that because, we weren't able to like be with each other. What was that like for you on Animal Farm?
It was probably a really similar thing. We did it on Zoom also. And then they recorded our voices separately, but we had the luxury of having Lillian Brown as our director just like give us really great clear moments before, and like different takes for each of us. And like, we didn't have a lot of time, probably much like The Spin. So you had to do a lot of prep before so that you knew exactly what you wanted to try. But then because you could at least see each other's faces and play off of each other. I still felt like it was still an artistic thing. I wasn't just doing it in a vacuum. And like, because of the playfulness of the people cast, and because of the leadership that Lillian had, we were safe. We felt safe enough to like try some shit, and it was really fun. But I'm so grateful that I could see everybody's faces, because that was really useful to me. I did something for Gift, but I had to record it on my phone, and we couldn't see each other, and I hated it so much. I hated it. Just because, like, we're theater artists, like, we want to be as close to in the same room as possible. And, like it doesn't necessarily feel like that all the time. But yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have to do that kind of stuff for too much longer.
Or we get used to it. Yeah.
Or we get used to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How's life generally? How are you dealing with the pandemic? Are you staying creative? Like, how are you doing all that?
Oh boy. I mean,
or not.
I think
because that's totally healthy
right.
too.
I know.
Yeah.
It depends on the day, right? And things like this are my lifeline. Like, any opportunity that I get to have contact with another person, and even talking about art is still close to making art.
Yeah.
For a while, like I was writing. I have a food blog, and so like I was trying to crank an entry out every week, and then I stopped because I ran out of steam. But like it kind of just depends on the day. Today, it's my life is this podcast, and
Same,
and then grocery shopping. Because the life of an actor is already so up and down. Like some of that is expected, but the added isolation is it's tough. It's a little tough.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully people will listen to this and be like, "Oh, I get to hang out with Emjoy and Elana and Scott, and feel like an actor for a little while."
Yes, hopefully.
Elana, what's new with you?
What's new with me? All right, I accidentally did a lot of shopping in the last week and a half that wasn't for gifts for people at all, just me for no reason. So like I got some really great boots and a new coat. I don't even go outside. And I got a pillow and some other like literally like I will think of something and I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that. Like, and that's like, and I'm not like a heavy shopper, right? Like, it's not a thing.
But you deserve nice things.
I mean, like, but whatever. Like, what am I even doing? It's so much nonsense. My home is full of stupid boxes. I did get one gift because today is Georgette's birthday, and I got her a gift for her birthday. But I didn't get I'm like Christmas gifts, whatever. I don't know if that's a thing. And then just buying stuff for myself. I got this hookup. So because of the court equipment, now I got this ether and this adapter so I can plug my laptop directly into my internet and have total stability. Like, that's a thing. I also got it's just random shit, y'all. I just started buying random shit. I think I'm done. But that's what's new with me.
Look, I'm not going to guilt you for any of that.
Well, thank you. I need no guilt. Scott, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm feeling a little guilty because I've discovered the game Ticket to Ride. It's a board game that I've loved for many years. And I just found the online version of it, and you can like play online with strangers. And so like, I've spent way too much time doing that. But it also has kind of taken over poker because I was playing poker a lot for a while, and now I've not played poker in a while. Anyway, when the lockdown started, my dad, my sister, and my cousin started playing poker online, and we'll also over Zoom, play with each other.
Oh, that's
cute.
Yeah,
it's been really awesome. And I have a niece down in Florida, and she's too young to play poker. So now I'm thinking we'll get Ticket to Ride, and so that we can have something that we can play with my niece, since I want to see her too.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. That's something good that happened.
That's great.
Thank you, Emjoy, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
That was awesome. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Emjoy Gavino and that it gives deeper insight into the art of understudying.
If you'd like to ask a question or give a suggestion, you can send an email to understudypodcast@gmail.com.
Or find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or head to our website at understudypodcast.weebly.com to sign up for updates.
Also, if you know someone we should interview, let us know.
Our theme song and all our other music is by Laura Mackenzie.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice and tell your friends.
And if you hated it, please tell your enemies.
And their parents.
And their stupid parents.
Cheers!
Bye!